What if I told you that your entire life could change, not because of luck, not because of talent, not because of money, but because of one single decision? One choice you almost didn't make, one moment you nearly ignored, one quiet decision that didn't look dramatic at the time, but slowly rearranged everything. Most people are waiting for a big breakthrough, but breakthrough doesn't start with something big. It starts with something small, repeated. This is the story of how one decision changed everything, and why the next one you make could change your life too. Make sure you watch this video to the end. You will understand. You will understand the power of one decision. There was a man sitting alone in a small, dimly lit apartment, staring at a crumpled piece of paper on the floor. He had just been handed his third rejection letter that month. His bank account had less than $20 in it. His phone was one missed payment away from being cut off, and the only meal he had eaten that day was a packet of instant noodles he found at the back of a dusty cabinet. At 32 years old, Marcus believed with everything in him that his best days were already behind him. And then, right there, in that silence, on the edge of giving up entirely, he made one decision that changed the entire direction of his life. Most people will never understand just how close they are to a breakthrough when they feel most broken. Research in human psychology tells us that the brain is actually most open to transformation during moments of deep discomfort, because pain creates the emotional urgency that logic never can. What looks like rock bottom is often the most fertile soil for radical, lasting change. Marcus did not know this science. He just knew he could not take one more day of standing still. So instead of going to sleep that night with the weight of defeat on his chest, he pulled out a torn notebook and wrote down one goal, just one, and circled it 3 times. That goal was simple but terrifying. He was going to walk into the most successful business in his town and offer to work for free. Not for a salary, not for recognition, just for the chance to learn, to be in the room, to observe what success looks like up close. It sounds almost embarrassingly simple, but that is exactly the kind of quiet, unassuming decision that history is full of. Steve Jobs dropped out of college and started sleeping on floors while attending classes he was never enrolled in, and those classes later shaped the design philosophy behind every Apple product ever made. The power was not in the grandness of the decision. The power was in making it at all. The next morning, Marcus woke up before sunrise. He ironed the only dress shirt he had, polished his worn shoes until they caught the light, and walked 45 minutes to the office of a logistics company owned by a man named Gerald Osei, a self-made entrepreneur known in the city for being both demanding and deeply generous. Marcus did not have an appointment. He did not have a resume that would impress anyone. What he had was a handwritten letter explaining exactly why he was there and what he was willing to sacrifice to prove himself. He slid it under the front desk and sat in the waiting area without being asked to. Gerald's assistant came out 3 times to tell Marcus that Mr. Osei was unavailable. Each time, Marcus nodded politely and said he would wait. By 2 in the afternoon, Gerald himself walked out of his office, stopped in front of Marcus, and looked at him for a long moment. He later said in an interview that it was not the letter that moved him, it was the fact that Marcus was still sitting there. That kind of persistence, Gerald said, is something you cannot train into a person. Either they have it or they don't. Gerald gave Marcus 1 week, no pay, just access. Marcus was allowed to shadow the operations team, sit in on client meetings, and take notes. He was not allowed to speak unless spoken to, and he was expected to arrive before everyone else and leave after. For most people, those conditions would have felt humiliating. For Marcus, they felt like oxygen. He absorbed everything. He stayed late not because he was told to, but because he genuinely could not get enough. He asked thoughtful questions after meetings ended. He identified a shipping route inefficiency in his 3rd day that had been costing the company money for over a year. By the end of that week, Gerald offered Marcus a paid position. It was entry-level. The salary was modest, but it was a door, and Marcus walked through it with his whole chest. What matters here is not the job offer itself. What matters is what came before it. That moment alone in the apartment. The decision to try one more thing before surrendering. Psychologists call this the threshold moment, the point at which a person either retreats into learned helplessness or pushes through into a new identity. Marcus pushed through. Over the next 2 years, Marcus was promoted 3 times. He built relationships with clients across 4 countries. He pitched a new service line that generated significant revenue for the company in its first quarter alone. He went from eating 1 packet of noodles a day to being invited to speak at a business conference as a rising talent in the logistics industry. None of it happened because Marcus was the smartest person in the room. It happened because he made one decision when everything in him wanted to give up. Before we continue, subscribe to this channel for more motivation story like this. Thanks for doing that. Here is what the story of Marcus teaches us that no motivational quote ever fully captures. A decision is not just a thought. A decision is a shift in identity. The moment you decide, you stop being the person who is waiting for life to get better, and you start being the person who is making life better. That distinction is everything. Research from Stanford University found that people who believe their circumstances can change through deliberate action are significantly more likely to overcome adversity than those who believe outcomes are fixed. Marcus did not just decide to try, he decided to become someone different. We often wait for the right moment to make a big move. We wait for more money, more confidence, more encouragement, more certainty. But certainty is a luxury that is rarely offered before the leap. Every person who has ever built something meaningful from nothing will tell you the same thing. They moved before they were ready. They decided before they had all the answers. They showed up before they felt qualified. The decision came first. The confidence came after, not the other way around. Marcus's story is not unique in its outcome. It is unique in its starting point. Because the truth is, most of us have had our own version of that dark apartment moment. That evening when we sat with our failures spread out in front of us and had to choose what to do next. What separates the people who rise from the people who stay stuck is rarely talent or resources or even timing. It is that one decision made in the dark, when no one is watching, when no one would even blame you for quitting. Think about the people throughout history whose entire legacies rest on a single turning point decision. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job and told she was not fit for the screen. She decided not to accept that story as the final word. She went back, she rebuilt, and she became one of the most influential communicators the world has ever seen. Her network, her magazine, her global reach, all of it traces back to the moment she refused to let one person's assessment define her entire trajectory. Or consider the story of J.K. Rowling, who was a single mother living on government assistance, struggling with depression, when she made a decision to keep writing a story about a young boy named Harry. She had already received multiple rejections from publishers. She had every reason to stop, but she made one decision to keep going, and that decision produced one of the most beloved literary franchises in history. The decision did not feel powerful in the moment. It felt desperate. Most life-changing decisions do. This is the part that nobody tells you. Life-altering decisions rarely feel heroic when you make them. They feel scary. They feel uncertain. They feel like you are walking out onto a bridge and hoping it holds your weight. The courage is not the absence of fear. The courage is deciding anyway. Marcus did not feel brave when he walked into Gerald's office building. He felt terrified. His hands were shaking when he handed that letter to the front desk. But he handed it anyway. And that is the whole story. Science supports this truth in remarkable ways. Studies on neuroplasticity show that the brain literally rewires itself when a person takes new action, especially in situations that feel uncomfortable or unfamiliar. Every time Marcus pushed past his hesitation and did something that scared him, his brain was forming new neural connections, new pathways of confidence and capability. The act of deciding was not just changing his external circumstances, It was physically changing his mind. There is a concept in behavioral science called identity-based habit formation, the idea that the most powerful form of change starts not with setting a goal, but with deciding who you want to be. Marcus did not just decide to apply for a job. He decided to be the kind of person who does not quit. He decided to be the kind of person who shows up. He decided to be the kind of person who earns his place. That identity decision was the engine behind every action that followed. 18 months after Marcus got that entry-level position, he was offered a partnership stake in a new venture Gerald was launching. 5 years after that night on the floor with the rejection letters, Marcus was running his own operation with 12 employees and contracts in 3 countries. He told a journalist who interviewed him for a business feature, "People see where I am now and they think it took 5 years, but it did not take 5 years. It took one night. It took one decision. The rest was just the consequence of that decision playing out." And that is the truth that this story exists to carry directly to you. You are not behind. You are not too old, too inexperienced, too late, or too far from where you want to be. You are sitting in your version of that apartment, and the question in front of you right now is the same one Marcus faced. What decision are you willing to make tonight that your future self will look back on and call the turning point? Not the decision to change everything at once. Not the decision to be perfect or fearless or certain. Just one decision, one step, one action taken in the direction of the life you keep saying you want.